Welcome to Sports Geek Q&A. Here's your host, Sean Callanan.
Yes, I'm Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Sports Geek Q&A. Remember, you can send in your questions. The best ways to do so is via the website sportsgeekhq.com/questions. Put your question in there and I will answer them on this very podcast. Or you can send me a Twitter DM at Sean Callanan, via Instagram at Sean Callanan, or via email sean@sportsgeekhq.com. Any of those methods are valid. Don't forget, you can support our podcasting and newsletter efforts via Patreon by going to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. Now, I'm going to do these questions a little bit differently this week because I had a phone call conversation with Paul Roach, who had some questions around streaming and OTT. So I decided to take the three best ones and put them in the one episode. So thank you very much, Paul. I hope my answers help you in the paper that you're writing. I look forward to reading it down the track once it is done. But Paul had some questions, and the first one was, what is the difference between streaming and OTT? Are they the same thing or not? And so my answer, my definition, streaming and OTT are different. OTT, if you don't know, it stands for over the top, and building an over the top service that sits on a platform like Apple or Google Play and those kind of things. So when we think of OTT, Netflix is OTT, Hulu is OTT, NBA League Pass, MLB at Bat, they're an OTT. So you're building something that's yours and pushing content through it. Whereas when someone says streaming, I think of streaming, something that is streaming on a service. So YouTube offers a streaming service. Obviously, Facebook offers a streaming service. Twitch is a famous streaming service in the gaming space. So that's how I differentiate it. They are used relatively interchangeably, but what we are seeing is more and more publishers, especially from a traditional sense, building out their own OTT offerings to mitigate the risks of fragmented markets and things like that. So that's my definition. OTT is when you build something yourself. It might be on a mobile phone. It might be sitting on a platform like Apple TV. Whereas streaming is, yes, we're going to put our content on that streaming platform, and that's where YouTube and Twitch and Facebook and to a certain extent Amazon sort of come into play, and that's where you can stream. So question 2 was really around the crux of Paul's paper was around how streaming and OTT offerings are disrupting the broadcast model in sports. And I guess my first take on this is that the technology is still, I think the technology is far outpaced the lawyers. So the broadcast agreements that sports rights holders have had have been caught out, especially in the last 10 years, have been caught out by the internet in what the rights that someone might have if they had, in some instances it was internet rights, which meant everything, which was a very broad scope. And slowly digital rights and streaming rights have been carved off and been more defined by the lawyers. So I think that's the first thing. And then the other part of it is the changing behavior. There's different players in these markets that only want the streaming component. So whereas the media rights used to be, here's the biggest bundle, it's going to the broadcast. It's going to the broadcaster, a free-to-air broadcaster, and they would take everything. And digital was really the top-up number. The streaming was the top-up number. But what we are seeing is the shift of viewership, and so we've seen a lot of courting of platforms like Facebook and Amazon and Twitter to try to get them into the same conversation of buying the rights and buying live rights and access to live sport as a way to get eyeballs and advertising and those kind of things. And so that has caused disruption. But at the moment, those players haven't yet put down the cold hard cash for a lot of those games. And so we're really in an interesting space right now from a rights holder point of view and from a broadcaster point of view of what do the next round of rights look like. And so that's why you've seen varying lengths of broadcast deals being done, some pushing them longer to give them some assurity and some stability. But then I think, the next 12 to 18 months to 3 years are going to be really interesting to see where sports and traditional broadcasters land, and also where those streaming rights end up. Do they end up staying with the sports rights holder? Do the broadcaster take them? Will a third party take them and try to monetize them? I think that's going to be something that's really interesting to watch, and also where that revenue comes in, and who are the winners out of it. From a sports side of thing, I hope the sport still gets its money, because it is very much foundational to the whole business model of sport. But if the advertisers don't pay, or the TV broadcasts aren't getting the advertising revenue, then that's obviously going to affect the number that they go for. The third question, or one of the questions, and the third question I'm going to use in this instance from Paul was, how will we be consuming sports in 5 years' time? Putting on futurist goggles, or trying to look too far in the future is sometimes dangerous, especially if we look back on what the landscape looked like, say, 10 years ago when I started Sports Geek. There wasn't a lot of streaming offerings in the sports space. MLB At Bat was one of the premium ones at that point. We fast forward 10 years and MLB At Bat became BAM Tech, and then eventually bought by Disney. And so that technology of watching baseball is now embedded into Disney Plus. But I do think one of the changes that has happened, and especially in the last 5 years, and it just keeps accelerating, is that more on demand and more fragmentation and more selection of specific sports will be what is available and what is also expected of consumers. I think if you talk to even if you talk to a 10-year-old right now, and they're going to be the next subscribers in 10 years' time, they don't go to a TV screen first. They expect to be able to pull up their phone and hit a button and watch something, because that's how they've grown up with things like Netflix and YouTube and the like. So appointment viewing and those kind of things, or even reaching for a TV remote, is potentially already foreign to them. So we'll see more OTT, going back to the original first question, we'll see more OTT offerings of leagues and sports offering an app or something on the Apple TV that allows you to access the games, whether it is playback, replay type, but also live. And so that will happen. And so I think you'll pick your sports. You'll say, yes, I'm an NBA fan, I'll have League Pass. I want to watch the EPL, I'll get something for Premier League, and how it gets delivered in our region will be the piece. So what was happening, bundling in cable form, 5 or 10 years ago, will now be happening in these OTT services, potentially. There might be some bundling. We've already seen that with Disney Plus bundling Disney, Hulu, and ESPN. So we might see those big giants do that, but that will be the challenge for marketers and sports rights holders in the future. You won't have this cross promotion of big mainstream TV or cable operators if people are just picking, I just want to follow my team, or I just want to follow the league. And it'll put more stress on that snackable content to draw people in, and seeing if they will then draw into and be drawn into full games. I think that'll be the big thing. Will we be watching full games start to finish And what will the model look like for us to do these tune-in red zone style with the NFL, or these 99 cents, I want to watch the last 5 minutes of the game in the NBA that they just toyed with. I think they're some of the things that will be different. Hopefully by then we'll have fixed the micropayment and make that rather frictionless. If that becomes frictionless, then I think it'll be far easier for us for the consumer. Now, then the second question is that going to roll up enough revenue for the sports is the unknown question for now. And that's the best I can do looking forward, but there's some of the things I'd like to see. So thank you very much, Paul. I really enjoyed the conversation that we had and the questions. So I appreciate the questions for this episode of Q&A themed around streaming, OTT and media rights. Remember, you can send in your questions at sportsgeekhq.com/questions. And I'd love your support on Patreon. Simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon to pledge your monthly support. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek.
You can reach Sean Callanan via email at sean@sportsgeekhq.com. Find out more about Sports Geek's digital to dollars process at digitaltodollars.com. Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.